So over the past couple of days, I've seen quite a handful of comments and arguments and debates and conversations regarding the recent Attack on Titan chapter and people not genuinely enjoying it. I was rather interested in this, confused but interested, and I really wanted to figure out why people didn't like this chapter, what didn't sit well with them. So I went through the comment section, I went through people's arguments on Twitter and just tried to get a general idea and understanding. I personally enjoyed the chapter. I felt like it was well needed. It was a nice breather chapter and it helped push forward a little bit of information while pushing forward a very important event, a very important group. Even. I feel like I've seen a lot of people say that this chapter was the final chapter of a volume, hence why it was a little bit lackluster. Would definitely make a lot of sense, but a breather chapter isn't necessarily a bad thing. Just for clarification before you skewer me within the comments, this is me not trying to change your opinion or belittle your opinion or your response or emotion towards the chapter. You are 100% able to feel the way you do. If you hate the chapter, you hate it. If you like it, you like it. And hopefully it's as simple as that. I just want to talk about some of the things that people weren't happy with. So there's a lot of things that swirl around this chapter that somewhat join together. Pacing, jarring moments between characters, the fact that people didn't like Marlians and Eldians working together so easily, and the overall feeling of it being a filler chapter. A good place to start off would be the pacing. I can agree that the pacing of this chapter was all over the place. There was a lot of different perspectives, there was a lot of different emotion and opinions, and a lot of different things that we had to go through. It felt rather progressive in that nature, but it also felt sometimes jarring. It kind of depends on how you read it. If you put yourself in the position of these two characters talking to one another, or these two characters talking to one another after that first one, you'll find that they not seamlessly join into one another, but they definitely have some cohesive ties there. It's not as jarring as something coming after said characters talking, and it's completely irrelevant. Isayama definitely tried to flow it into one another as best as possible, whether they brought up similar situations or the conversation was tied together in some way, shape or form, or even the emotion. So in a sense, if you fly through the chapter, it's going to seem rather jarring, but if you sit down and spend a little bit of time with the characters and look over the panels and just take in everything at a slower pace, I feel like you'll find everything ties a little bit easier together. With everything being all over the place, I feel like it reflects the nature of everything that's going on. Everything is all over the place. There is no cohesive thing to do that people can work towards, and it shows with how scattered people are emotionally, mentally, and physically across the map at the moment. No one was realistically close to one another until they started to move forward with some sort of idea, some sort of plan. It reflects the nature of the Wall Titans out right now. It reflects the chaos of everything, and slowly but surely you'll notice that these characters start to come together and they start to get some better grip on the reins of the story, the reins of the events and what's going on around them. They start to take control, showcasing that with them coming together, with them having to work together to stop such a powerful opponent potentially, is a very nice thing. It's well needed. It was always going to happen, and I know a lot of people don't like the collective group thing, the super squad or the Avengers squad, whatever you want to call them, but it was always going to happen with the information that we had months ago. We just didn't know how they would collectively come together and who would come into that group, but now we have a better picture, and we also have a clearer picture, somewhat, to what the finale of the story is going to look like. I don't think in any regards this was a filler chapter like people did put. Yes, it was a breather chapter. Yes, it is the final chapter of a volume supposedly, but it gave a lot of information. It gave a lot of insight for these characters, almost brought these characters to a conclusion in a way. It felt like a lot of their development, even though it was little, has almost reached that end point where you don't have to develop these characters all too much anymore. Armin has somewhat reached that capping point. He's almost there. Connie has pretty much capped over. I don't see any more development for him. Mikasa has a bit more, Armin has a bit more, Hanji and Levi are somewhat up in the air. They've always kind of had this cap over them, but they're expanding little by little. Gabby, Falco, etc, etc. It does this nice job in understanding these characters' emotions and what they're going through. By no means is it filler. It's actually really important. It helps you bring the tension down of everything that's going on. It allows you to breathe. It allows you to take in the subtle notes of this story and what's important about it. Without this information, without this character dialogue, a lot of these situations conversations and these events would be bland. If we didn't have filler chapters like this, a massive portion of the importance behind so many characters within the story, including Eren, including Zeke, wouldn't be a thing. These chapters are the backbone to a lot of these high tense moments. It allows us to be away from those high tense moments, to allow us to recollect our thoughts while still getting this importance and giving this emotional connection to these characters. Personally, for me, they're a great thing to have, but I see the argument on why people don't like them. If people really want a fighting chapter or a climatic chapter, by all means, of course, but just know that these quote-unquote filler chapters do a lot subconsciously, and the biggest reason you like your favorite characters within stories is because of chapters like this. Very small things that make these characters feel alive and realistic and allow you to have this emotional connection to them. I think it's overall pretty great. Now, the final thing that people just really didn't like, and this was the thing I kept seeing time and time again, the biggest thing that stood out to me. They didn't like the idea that Marleyans and Eldians are working together so easily. There's no repercussion, there's no problem with them working with one another, they're just trying to take out a bigger threat. In reality, this was pretty much always going to happen. Some would struggle to see the problem with this. This is a really progressive thing, but the people that are Marleyan, that are working very closely within the group, are very small within their own respective role. I mean, the general is a rather big role to have, but this isn't going to ooze out into a reform of ideologies and to go back home to Marley and say, yay, we talked with Eldians, we worked with them, we took down a capital monolithic enemy, we should give them a bypass. It's not going to do that, right? This is all meant to be stepping stones to something better, right? This is what the story has been trying to tell you. This is what the story has put in motion so many different times, but people forget those previous times. There's so many stepping stones of Marleyans understanding Eldians. Someone like the General is a really important showcase. He's seen a lot of different things. He has been through the wars. He's been manipulated like every other Marleyan over there, like any other person that hates Eldians, to make them think a certain type of way. I feel like one of the hardest opinions to change or mentalities to change is someone of one, a politician, or two, a general in an army. If General Magath of all people can work closely with Eldians without having this superiority complex, without having this racism imbued into it, where he's like, ew, Eldians, but he sees that for the betterment of the world, for the betterment of the future of both Marleyans and even Eldians potentially, to work together to take out such a global threat, that is a progressive thing. That is the one thing that's going to help this story reach some sort of quote-unquote better conclusion. This does not end the hatred. I think that's a big thing that people get confused. Just because they're working together doesn't mean the hatred's gone instantly. This is thousands upon thousands of years that have been built up within anger, within manipulation, within raising children to hate this certain race because of this certain thing. But when you take away that certain thing, the Titan power, the ability to hate these type of people slowly starts to trickle away. It's not as impactful anymore. If you call someone a devil because they have an ability to turn into a Titan, or because they're related to Titan shifters, if that Titan shifting ability is away, can you still call them a devil, technically? Theoretically, yes, but the impactful nature for it, the importance, the weight is no longer there, the reasoning is no longer there, and slowly but surely reform starts to come into play. It's not going to happen overnight, it may not happen for a very long time, but it is stepping stones, very small and brittle stepping stones for a conversation, not for an action, not for a legitimate event and change, but for a conversation. Conversation for peace, a conversation for something else, a conversation for you leave us alone and we'll leave you alone, something. When the future of the human race and the entirety of the globe is at stake, you would have to be extremely dumb to hold that prejudice to that certain people or group or ethnicity, to not want to work with them to save the globe, to save the human race. That is a very massive backstep for humanity. That doesn't even help them. They may feel good about their own emotions within that moment because they're not working with Eldians, but then they realize that they're not going to live to continue hating them in the first place. You got to find some sort of middle ground, right? People take the stepping stones rather intensely. Just know that however the story goes, there's going to be some sort of reform in some shape to some degree towards the outlook of Eldians. And like I said, and I'll always say it, the hatred is not going to change that quickly, and the rest of the world isn't going to follow suit that quickly. But when you have a powerhouse of a threat like Eren that threatens the human race as you know it, there is some sort of conversation that can be had by that working with Eldians, that using the power of Titans is the only way to stop this. The only way humanity and the human race can continue to prosper is because of the same power and abilities that they called evil to begin with. The irony is there, but the conversation opens up from it. And that's what's important. If they can have speaking terms, Malians don't have to forgive Eldians, but they can sure be somewhat intelligent about it, hopefully, if they want to save themselves and if they want to save other people across the globe. Just like Eldians, they have a common goal. Them working together does not come lightly. The final things that I want to gloss over quickly, that I've been thinking about over the past couple of days. Who was in the window, and how did the somewhat plan come together? How did everyone formulate this collective plan with so many people all over the place if they never met up with them? Who I think is in the window is Keith. Keith Shatters, the commander, general, whatever you want to call him. We've seen him in the previous chapter in a prison cell. Why would it be him? If it's not going to be someone extremely important, it's going to be someone that's going to change something. The only reason I feel Isayama would play on a mysterious figure within a window and showcase that so heavily and directly is because they're going to change something. And if that is Keith, which makes sense with the location and even the general shape of that shadowy figure, if it is Keith, Keith is going to be the person to disband the Jaegerist, or he's going to put a big nail within it. He's not going to obliterate them, but if he can change the Jaegerist's mind, if he can do something worthwhile, he can stop this ideology manipulation that Flock has been doing for a lot of different people. He's using these scare tactics to bring everyone in. He's showing them that there's no other way that this can go other than to follow Eren, and a lot of people are obviously on board, but if Keith can stop this in some way, shape or form, which he does have a couple of people to back him up as well, that can slow down that Jaegerist process. That can slow down the people trying to join that collective. Why would that need to be a thing? Just to somewhat conclude the fact that the Jaegerists aren't going to be a thing anymore, that there's going to be general citizens that may still agree with Eren but aren't under a collective banner, and Keith having a very close connection with Eren, having a very close connection with Grisha, being the one to find him outside the walls so many years ago, it would make sense that disbanding the Jaegerist and the whole ideology and worshipping of Eren Jaeger is Keith himself. Even if it's the last thing that he does. Could be a nice beautiful send-off for his character. If it's not Keith, I'm not really sure who else it could be. I don't see the point on why you'd play on them so prominently and directly and call them out. Keith is pretty much the prime candidate at the moment, and the Jaegerists have to go. They're both in the general vicinity of one another. The Jaegerists are kind of loose and all over the place, but at the helms of Flock. If Keith can get in there and take his group with him, he may be able to change that. Lastly, how did the plan come together? How did all of these people work in conjunction so accurately? I went back and tried to read a couple of chapters, and there's nothing necessarily to imply that they were in cahoots from a very long time ago. That's to go to show with the Card Titan and Hanji and everyone else. The only way that this could be a legitimate possibility, unless Isayama is trying to leave out blanks for the purpose that Mikasa or someone else has been going around and feeding information very easily, is Eren communicated with them directly. When he brought everyone into that specific Ymir place, he contacted a couple of different people, more specifically Mikasa, Armin, and Hanji. 3 people that are extremely powerful and could easily get a bunch of people to work with them. You could even say that Eren connected with everyone that's currently in the group, or everyone that was brought into that place, I should say, and told them somewhat the outcome or what he plans to do. So they could slowly put into position where they needed to be, talk to whoever they needed to talk to, make connections on who they needed to make connections to, and slowly come together. If they know the outcome of what Eren's doing, and it wouldn't surprise me why they seem so positive in the direction that they're going. There seems to be no undecisiveness behind it. They seem very sure of what they're doing, and the only way I could see that being a possibility if is some way, shape or form they know what Eren's doing, whether he gave them the information or something along those lines to propel them forward to a result. Now, did he do this on his own means or did it accidentally slip? I'm not entirely sure. Obviously that's somewhat up in the air and we'll probably get that in the upcoming chapters, but I wouldn't be surprised if he told people what he's going to do specifically, where he's going to go, what's going to happen. Maybe on top of that he could have asked for help, but it kind of depends on how you want to view Eren. Is Eren so stuck in his way where he's even told people what he's going to do? And I mean more so the steps for it, not just the fact that he's going to destroy the entirety of the world. Or is there a bigger plan in motion that Eren doesn't want to do all of this? Or that Eren's going to destroy a very specific part of Mali that's for some reason hold a lot of powerful government heads across the globe within that one place. And then everyone knowing the knowledge can come together and stop Eren. At this rate, only time will tell. There's a lot of questions up in the air at the moment that we really need answers for, and most definitely the upcoming chapters are going to supply those answers in some way, shape or form. I feel like all our fingers are pretty much crossed at the moment. We're hoping for the best. So with that being said, that is basically it. Let me know how you felt about the chapter. Was there some things that you weren't happy with? Some things you didn't like? How do you feel about the whole Eren communicating with people type thing? Who do you think is in the window? Who is that mysterious man? Let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But I'm actually going to end the video off here. I hope you all enjoyed and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.